I often think of Photoshop as working with raster images or digital photographs, but it does support vectors. And using shapes in Photoshop is a great way to combine your vector and your raster elements. For example, you might want to use this for some web-based graphics or a stencil or some type of logo. So we're going to explore how we can incorporate those shapes into our photo images. Let's get started. Well, the first thing I want to do is make sure that I have my shape tool active. And I go ahead and click on that, and I've got this rectangle tool here. And at the top, I've got lots of options that go across, and there's different drawing modes. And the shape mode is the default here, and as you see, when I draw a rectangle, it's going to create an image, a shape for me that looks just like that rectangle. There's a thin gray line around it because that is the path. And if I come over to my paths panel, I can see a work path that is set up to represent this rectangle. One of the nice things about this version is that it actually names the paths or the layers more intuitively. So now rectangle 1 as opposed to just shape layer 1. So it makes it easier to keep track of what's going on. If I switch to my tool, for example, my path selection tool here, I can actually move this entire item. I can resize it if I need to. See if I can get to that corner. Oh, here we go. Could go just up to the width and put in the width and height and put some information in there and resize it. And because it's vector-based, it's not resolution dependent, so resizing it isn't going to distort it. I could also move to my direct selection tool and get to different handles. Now, right now, all the handles are selected. So I'm going to click outside of it and then click back on the path, and you can see how they're all hollow, they're all clear. And then just click on one of those points and I can drag it in and create a different effect. I could even go ahead and use my other tools like my convert point tool here and click and drag to turn this into a curved option, or simply click on it again to make it into a corner. Now that was using the rectangle tool here as a shape. If I change it to a path when I draw, I'll go change that shape mode. There's no fill. Let's try this one more time. Let me just go back to paths and make sure nothing's selected, just in case. Let's click on the background. It could be the layer that I'm on. So here I am, I'm changing path, and I'm going to draw it, and there's a path, and there's no fill. It's actually a little bit like a selection in the sense that it's just waiting for me to do something. It does make it as a work path, and I could save this by double-clicking on it and turn it into a path, or I could just ignore it and it'll go away. You could also create then based on pixels, and we'll go ahead and try this out here. We'll just make another rectangle, and you can see how it's filling it up. And depending on what layer you're on, it could actually replace your elements or replace the pixels on there. So I'm going to definitely use my undo command to remove those pixels from the background. Now, in addition to the rectangle, you have some other tools. For example, the rounded rectangle, the ellipse tool. And with the ellipse tool, you can make circles or ovals. If you just click and drag down, you're creating an oval. Oops. Better change my drawing mode back, though. I'll go back to path. And by click and drag down, I'm creating that oval. The square went away, by the way, because it was a work path, and you only have one path selected at a time. And when I made this new shape, it replaced it with a new circle. Incidentally, these tools work just the same as you would in other drawing products, like PowerPoint, for example, in the sense that if I hold down Shift, I'm going to constrain the shape to a perfect circle, proportionally perfect. And if I hold down Alt while I'm drawing here, let me start the drawing and then start adding Alt after I start drawing, it's going to size it from the center as opposed to from the corner. And I can even do Alt and Shift, and I get from the center out a proportionally perfect circle. In fact, with that circle, I could go and make a couple changes. Here's my convert shape. I'm just going to make sure that the object is selected. Hold down Control to select it, or I could have used my arrow here and click on that anchor point, and it converts it from a curve to an anchor. Go over here to the white arrow and pull that down a little bit. Click on the anchor point and convert. Can pull it up, and I can create a heart. And if I wanted to, I could even save that as a permanent path, or just leave it as a work path. Come back here into layers. Now that being said, let's take a closer look at these shapes. In addition to all these standard shapes, we also have custom shapes. I'm going to click on custom shapes. And there are several different shapes that we can use, including, here's a heart. We can actually just click on that, and we've got a beautiful heart that we can draw, and we can even change the color in there if we needed to. I'm going to go ahead and remove some of these tools so we have some more room to see what's going on. In addition to these symbols, we also have more items that we can pull from. There's different libraries. For example, here's one called Animals. And I'm going to go ahead and click on Append, and that will add these shapes. Here, I could add a bunny to our garden scene. And I go back, and I'm looking, I see some music options, some nature, some symbols, some talk bubbles, all kinds of interesting things. Append that. And perhaps I want to add a butterfly to that scenario there too. And then I can come back and use them as I need them. You can even create your own custom shapes. I'm going to do this by using a path. So I've got a path here of the wheelbarrow. It's already been created and finished. And now I'm going to go to my Edit menu. And down near the bottom, I have an option called Define Custom Shape. I'll give it a name. I'll call it wheelbarrow. Click on OK. And I can see here's my shape. In fact, just to make it more interesting, let's go ahead and create a new document. Control-N to create a new one. Use the default Photoshop size. And I'll pick a wheelbarrow color. I like that red. That's good. And here's my wheelbarrow. And just go ahead and draw that shape. Let's actually change it here. And then you can draw that shape, and there you go. I won't save it. Then, interestingly enough, I could even go ahead and save these shapes as their own library. So if I start creating my own custom shapes, for example, a logo or some stencil that I'm going to use over and over again, it's going to be there by default, but if I want to save it long term, I could actually save that as a file and then reload it as needed. Let's take a closer look at shapes when you start combining them or adding shapes together. So let's start by using a circle tool here. And we look at the default, and we can see that it's going to create a new layer. But if we wanted to, we could use some different types of combination. So we're going to use something called Exclude Overlapping Shapes. I'm going to make sure that I'm on this background layer, so I'm not on any of those existing layers. And I'm just going to go ahead and create a circle. And I'm going to create another circle inside of it. And because we had Exclude, you create a wheel or a donut shape. So that's an example of Exclude. And if I'm moving this around, I'm holding my Control key to move it. You can see how those shapes are still available. So that's really the path that I'm moving. And as they are intersecting, I'm getting some different results. Let's go ahead and hide that. Another option was using the intersect shape instead of the exclude. So let's go ahead and try this one called intersect. And we'll go ahead and draw another one on top. And you create kind of like an eye or a lemon because you're seeing where the two shapes are intersecting together. Okay, let's try this one, the subtract. And make a circle. I'll make another circle here. Creates a moon effect because I'm seeing where, and I'm getting the, oops, got to change my arrow. I've got to get the path selection because I'm getting the knockout of that. And we had one more where we had our option to, let's go back here, where we had an option to combine shapes. And I'll go ahead and add another circle here on the side, and it creates like a figure 8 or glasses, depending on how you want to see it. And so you can either combine them, subtract them, intersect them, exclude them, but by default you're going to create new layers. But it's a nice option how you can blend them together. And if we take this as another look at, back to our custom shapes here, go back to custom shapes, and let's go ahead and change this to combine shapes. When we want to make sure that we're on a new layer that's not a shape layer. Oops. Now I see why I wasn't seeing my custom shapes. I didn't go all the way down. I got to click on that custom shapes. There we go. And I want to create a couple of different butterfly options. What I'm doing is I'm actually, whoops, try that again. I realized I had to be on the right tool. Let's try this one more time. Here we go. So a lot of Photoshop is making sure you're on the right tool, the right layer. We'll call this real life experience here. So I'm on the right tool. I'm going to change my option. Instead of new layer, it's going to combine shapes. And as I start doing this, I'm adding more shapes, and I'm creating lots of different butterflies, but they're all on the one element so that I can apply an effect globally to this particular shape. That's quite a bit that you can do with vector objects in Photoshop, which is really known for all of its raster elements. But now you can use shape tools and you can draw in your own custom elements or use some of those preset stencils to enhance your already spectacular artwork.